You've done it hundreds of times. You walk into a room and the whole thing is simply there. The chair in the corner, the stack of books near the window, the warm morning light, and you realize, only if you stop to think about it, that you didn't actually look for any of it. It arrived before your eyes had a chance to search. That should feel stranger than it does. Now think about the last time you were absolutely certain you left something somewhere. Your keys on the counter, your phone face down on the table, and it wasn't there. Not misplaced, gone. You looked directly at the spot, you would have sworn on it, and yet there was nothing. Or there was, and you didn't see it. Later, someone else walked in and found it immediately, right where you'd looked. That's unsettling in a specific way that's hard to explain. It's not just embarrassing. It touches something deeper, a quiet suspicion that what you see and what is actually there might not be the same thing. There's a version of this that happens in conversation too. You're arguing with someone you know well, a partner, a sibling, an old colleague, and you both experience the same event, same room, same words exchanged, same outcome. But the story each of you carries away is so different, it barely resembles a shared reality. You remember the tone of a particular comment. They don't recall saying it at all. They remember a look you gave them. You have no memory of it. Both of you are convinced. Neither of you is lying. Or consider this. You drive a familiar route, 40 minutes of highway. You arrive, park, and realize you remember almost nothing of the journey. Not the exits, not the traffic, not the songs that played. Your body performed every task correctly, lane changes, signaling, adjusting speed, and your mind was completely somewhere else. 3 different experiences, 3 different mysteries, but each one is pointing at the same unsettling question: how much of what you perceive is real, and how much of it is something your mind has constructed in advance? Because what if seeing isn't something you do? What if it's something your brain has already decided to do, before your eyes even open? Start with what the brain is actually doing, moment to moment. It's receiving an enormous amount of raw sensory data, something in the range of 11 million bits of information per second from your eyes, ears, skin, and body. And here's the part that should stop you cold. Your conscious mind processes roughly 40 to 50 of those bits. The rest is handled somewhere else, sorted, weighted, discarded, or assembled before you ever become aware of it. So your conscious experience of the world is not the raw feed. It's already been edited, heavily. What reaches your awareness is a curated version of reality, filtered by something that has its own priorities, its own history, its own sense of what matters. For a long time, the dominant model of perception went something like this. The world sends information up through your senses. Your brain receives it, processes it, and constructs a picture. Bottom up, input, then output. It seemed obvious. It still seems obvious, which is part of what makes the newer evidence so disorienting. In the last few decades, a very different model has emerged from neuroscience, one that doesn't just complicate that picture, it inverts it. The brain, it turns out, is not primarily a receiver, it is a prediction machine. Before any sensory information arrives, your brain has already generated a model of what it expects to encounter. It's running a kind of internal simulation, constantly, continuously, without pause, based on every experience you've ever had, every pattern you've ever encountered, every outcome you've ever learned to anticipate. When sensory data comes in, the brain doesn't process it from scratch. It compares the incoming signal against its prediction. If the prediction was accurate, very little needs to be updated. The world looks exactly as expected, and you move through it seamlessly. If there's a mismatch, something unexpected, something that breaks the pattern, a signal goes up. Pay attention, something is different here. The philosopher Andy Clark and the neuroscientist Carl Friston have each, in their own ways, worked extensively on this framework, what is now called predictive processing. Friston's model in particular describes the brain as an organ perpetually trying to minimize surprise, to reduce the gap between what it predicted and what actually happened. Perception, in this view, isn't the beginning of the process, it's the correction. This is why you can read sentences with scrambled middle letters. It's why you fill in dropped words when someone is speaking in a noisy room. It's why optical illusions are so stubborn. Your brain has learned a rule, built a model, and refuses to abandon it even when you consciously know it's wrong. The prediction wins. But here's where it gets personal. Your predictions aren't neutral. They're not some pure computational output running on clean logic. They're built from your specific life, your history of reward and punishment, your earliest experiences of safety and threat, the patterns of the people who raised you, every room you've ever entered, and what happened inside it. Two people standing in the same place, at the same moment, are running entirely different predictive models. They are, in a precise and non-metaphorical sense, living in different versions of the same room. The question then isn't whether your brain is filtering reality. It is, what has it been trained to see, and what has it been trained to miss? Consider what this means for something as ordinary as walking into a room where you felt criticized before. A parent's house, a particular office, a classroom from childhood. You don't consciously decide to brace yourself. You're not running through a list of reasons to feel tense, but your body shifts slightly. Your attention narrows. You catch a tone of voice more quickly. Read a pause as meaningful. Interpret a neutral expression as faintly disapproving. The room is just a room, but your brain arrived there already knowing, with great confidence, what to expect. This is not a failure of rationality, it is rationality, in the brain's terms. It's the system doing exactly what it was designed to do, use past information to navigate the present efficiently. The problem is that efficiency and accuracy aren't the same thing. Think about how this plays out in relationships over time. In the early stages, when someone is new to you, your predictions about them are loose and uncertain. You're receiving more raw signal. You're genuinely surprised more often. But as months and years pass, your predictive model of that person solidifies. You begin to hear what you expect them to say before they've finished the sentence. You see a particular expression on their face and immediately assign an emotion to it, the emotion you've seen there before. You stop fully registering the actual incoming information because the model has become reliable enough to run on its own. Sometimes the model is accurate, but sometimes the person in front of you has changed or was never quite what the model said they were, and you won't easily see it. The update is expensive. It costs attention, it costs uncertainty, and the brain is deeply reluctant to spend either without strong justification. The same mechanism shapes how you see yourself. The internal model you carry of who you are, capable or not, worthy or not, the kind of person who succeeds in certain situations or who doesn't. That model filters the incoming evidence of your actual life just as aggressively as it filters anything else. You will notice the confirmation. You will smooth over the contradiction. Not because you're dishonest, but because prediction is the architecture you're running on. There are real consequences to this in how decisions get made. The brain tends to seek evidence that fits its current model, a tendency psychologists have mapped extensively under the name confirmation bias. But framed through predictive processing, it's not really a bias in the pejorative sense. It's the system being efficient, it's conserving resources, it's doing what it has always done, minimizing surprise, stabilizing the world. The difficulty is that some surprises deserve to be felt, some contradictions deserve to stay open, some predictions are wrong in ways that matter, not trivially wrong, but wrong in ways that have quietly shaped the direction of a person's entire life. There's a version of you that has been moving through a world partly of its own construction, navigating a map that was drawn a long time ago, in rooms that no longer quite exist. And the map, for the most part, has felt like the territory. It would be tempting at this point to reach for something practical. A list, a technique, some method for overriding the predictions and seeing clearly. But that's not quite how this works, and offering it that way would be its own kind of distortion. You can't simply decide to stop predicting. The system isn't optional. It's not a setting you can toggle off. The brain will keep generating its models regardless of what your conscious intention is. What can change, and what changes everything, is the relationship you have with those predictions. The first thing that shifts is noticing. Not judging, not correcting, just noticing that you are already mid-prediction before any experience has fully landed. That flicker of irritation before someone has finished speaking. The way a conversation feels like a replay before it's even begun. The assumption that you already know what's in the room. These aren't objective readings of the world. They're the model running. And there is a difference, subtle but real, between living inside the model and being able to observe it. Genuine surprise becomes a kind of compass. When something genuinely catches you off guard, when someone acts contrary to your model of them, when a place feels different than expected, when a moment refuses to conform to the shape you anticipated, that dissonance is information. The brain experiences it as noise, but it can be understood as signal. The prediction was wrong here. Look more carefully. This isn't about achieving some pure unfiltered perception. That's not available to any human mind. It's about loosening the grip of certainty, about sitting in the gap between what you expected and what actually arrived, and letting that gap mean something, which is, perhaps, as close to clear-eyed as any of us ever gets. What this finally points toward is something stranger and more interesting than a cognitive quirk. The brain's insistence on prediction is not a design flaw. It's what allows you to function at all, to move through a complex world without being overwhelmed by the sheer volume of what's happening at every moment. The filtering is necessary. The prediction is necessary. The question has never been whether the model exists. It has always been whether you know it does, because there's a meaningful difference between a person who moves through life assuming their perceptions are simply reality, transparent, neutral, accurate, and a person who understands that what they see has already been shaped before they see it by everything they've been. The second person isn't more skeptical, exactly, they're more porous. They hold their interpretations a little more lightly. They leave more room for the world to contradict them. Philosophy has circled this question for centuries. Kant wrote about the structures the mind imposes on experience. The idea that we never encounter reality directly, only through the organizing frameworks we bring to it. What neuroscience has done is move that idea from the philosophical to the biological. The structures are real. They live in the architecture of how your neurons fire, how predictions cascade down through layers of your visual cortex, how a single familiar smell can reconstruct an entire emotional world in under a second. And there is something quietly spiritual in that, if you're willing to sit with it, not in a vague, untethered way, but in the recognition that the reality you inhabit is, to a significant degree, the one you've been conditioned to inhabit, and that this conditioning is not your fault, and not permanent, and not the last word on what you're capable of perceiving. You are not simply seeing the world, you are seeing the world your history prepared you to see. And occasionally, in moments of genuine surprise or stillness or radical honesty, you catch a glimpse of something your predictions didn't account for. Those moments aren't glitches, they're openings. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy exploring the hidden architecture of the mind, consider subscribing to Selvion, new explorations every week at the intersection of neuroscience, philosophy, and human experience. Until next time, stay curious.